All right, good to see everybody here tonight. Um, let's start off by greeting each other. So I will say, Kerete to you all. Now you say, Kere. Very good. You also have the option of Keirin, and that's more formal. We can both say that to each other, regardless of how many you're talking to. So Kere, Kerete, Keirin. All right, now I write this up here real quick. We are here in the fog. If you've never studied a foreign language before, you need to learn the fog principle. What that means is, Sunday, you may have felt a little overwhelmed with learning all the letters. And we're only halfway through with the letters. But here's the thing. Being in the fog, if you keep taking steps forward, what you're going to discover is you will never be out of the fog. But lesson number 1, will stop being in the fog as you keep moving forward. So if you just keep with it, you'll find that you can look back about 5 lessons and say, oh, that makes sense now. I didn't get it back then, but now it's starting to make sense as I keep moving forward. Another way I've also heard about this, kind of similar, maybe another side of the coin, is the toast principle. Anybody like to eat toast? All right, you put it in the toaster and you turn on the heat, and if you were able to kind of look down inside there, it stays about the same color for a while. And then it browns. And if you leave it in for long enough, it burns. But the toast principle says that, it's going to be a little while before something will click, and then it'll click. So don't worry if you feel like you're in the fog. Don't feel if it's just not clicking yet. You're still moving forward, you're still learning, and then it'll click, and you'll be able to look back and see what you've learned. So don't feel discouraged. If you feel discouraged, we're going to make it through this. All right, so we're going to quickly review here. Let's just say the letters together and the sound that they make. This letter is alpha, and it makes the ah sound, as in father. The A sound is in father. This letter is vita, vita. And you can kind of make that a strict V sound, or you can make it a BV kind of sound. So it's vita, vita. Often we hear it as beta, but we're going to say it vita, vita. All right. The next letter is gamma, and it makes what's this first sound it makes? The primary sound. G, g. It can also make the y sound. When is it going to make a y sound? When it's followed by a long E sound, which we've already noticed a couple of those long E sounds. We have iota, eta, and we're going to see ypsilon as well. All right, so gamma. Next letter is delta, delta. And this is kind of a D sound, but it's kind of a breathy D sound. So, and you're using your tongue a little bit, delta, delta. It's kind of the, as we talked about, the TH in the, delta. All right? The next letter we learned was epsilon, epsilon. And this is kind of the, let's make that, it's kind of the EY in they, epsilon. All right, so we have, this is our second vowel. We've had alpha, we have epsilon. The next letter we learned was zeta, zeta. And this is a Z sound, just a strict Z sound in modern Greek pronunciation. And so we have zeta. The next letter we learned was eta, eta. And it looks like that. And especially for those who are just joining us tonight, we did get a somewhat of a recording. We'll get that available when we can. But we're only learning the second letter up here. Let's see if it'll show up. Yeah. This is the lowercase letter. We're not worried about the uppercase letters. I'm just putting them there. All right. So this is a long E sound. E, eta. All right. The next letter we learned was theta, theta. And this is a harder TH. And so you're putting your teeth on the end of your tongue and pushing air through. Theta, theta. All right, so TH. The next letter we learned was iota, iota. And I was telling some people that I've heard multiple kind of modern Greek pronunciations. It probably depends on where you are in Greece, kind of like how do you pronounce American English? Well, it kind of depends on where you are in America. But this could have more of a Y sound or more of a, well, let's put it as a long Y sound, kind of a iota, iota. So you can either do it more of a Y of iota or iota, but it's this long E sound, kind of iota, iota. All right, so this we saw that the word temple begins with this letter. The next letter we learned was kappa, kappa, just strictly like our K sound, like cardiac, though we spell it with the C, they would have spelled it with a K if it was English letters. So kappa, k, k. All right. And the last letter we learned was lambda, lambda. And this is our L sound, lambda. And we saw that our word laos is the word for people, and it begins with this letter L, lambda. All right, any questions so far? All right, so that's what we've learned so far. Does everyone still have their handouts so that they can, if they want to, write down these letters as we go through? All right. If not, I don't have any more copies unless there's some still back there. There may be some. There's a couple more? All right, if there's any extras, does anybody need a copy to borrow for tonight? All right. Then the next letter we're going to learn is me, me. This is the M, and this one, you start below the line, you come up to the middle, down and up. So it's almost like our English letter U with kind of a line on the front of it. Or you can just kind of view it as, oh, it's an M that got a little stretched out on some of the spots. So but it is the M sound, and it's me. Makes the sound, me. The word we're going to remember with this is mitir, mitir. And that's the word mother. Mother is mitir. So me, me. All right. Everybody got that? Any questions about it?
So did our word come from that originally? It looks almost transliterated.
There are some similarities. I think it then goes, ours may be more of a direct descendant of Latin and German, but Greek is probably lying behind that. But yeah, there's a, I can't remember what it is. There's a word that is sometimes used, and I can't remember what it is. That's I think in Latin it's mater, if I'm not mistaken. So we have probably some lineage there. All right, the next letter is ni, and so this is kind of nice, isn't it? K L M N. We're having the same sounds come up here, and oh yeah, Bryce told me that for recording purposes, I needed to do a better job of making these letters a lot bigger. So I'm going to try to do that. This does not erase as nicely as I'd like it to. So I'll try to do this bigger. All right. So if we were to put this on a big line, that is a ni. What does it look like in English? It's not a V. It is a ni. Not a V, ni. And this is the N sound. And so, n. A word that is all over the New Testament is nomos. Nomos. And this is the word law. So say it with me. Nomos. Nomos. We have, in fact, some English letters that I think are going to borrow from this root. But we have nomos is the word for law. So ni makes the n sound. Nomos. All right. All right, what do you think might be next? We would like it to be O, but it's not O. Actually, we have something in between. And so this is in Greek, you have some double letters. And if I remember correctly, it's not like I spend a lot of time studying the development of the Greek letters and from classical to Hellenistic, but if I remember correctly, these would have been distinct letters that you still have in the alphabet, like kappa and sigma. And then they started having words that use these two letters together until you just kind of contracted them together and they made a new letter that had both those sounds. And so this is xi. This is a fun one to write. It's a little tough to start writing, and so that's why you have to fill out that whole long line, really getting a feel for how you write it. But you start way at the top and go all the way down. So you're covering the whole line, and it's almost like you've got a kind of a curvy E or a backwards 3 with some little squigglies on the top and bottom. And that is a xi, and it is a combo letter of kappa and sigma put together. So if you say x, and then put it together, xi, that's the letter, that's the sound, x, which is not unlike our combo letter, right? X. Now we put the vowel at the front when we say it. We don't say xi, we say x, and yet we're still making the same sound whenever we use that, is x, x. All right, so that's the letter xi. The word we have up here is xilon, and that's the word for tree, one of the words for tree. There's another word, dendron, which starts with delta. Have you ever heard in biology of dendrites? It's because they look like trees. It's a dendron, but this is xilon, and I'm sure we have some English words that are related to this, and I can't remember what they would have been. All right, so xi, and just practice writing that. So that's the handwriting, and again, it's all one motion. You're not, don't have to lift your pen at all. It's just starting at the top, down, or middle, down, curve back.
It's KS, it's not GZ.
What?
Oh, okay, never mind. I'm sorry. I think when Bob Baldwin taught this, he taught it as more of like a GZ, like eggs.
Oh yeah, so in modern, it would be KS, xi.
He would have called us the, what is it,
Erasmian. Yeah.
Because we were doing what, was it U and D?
Yeah. And those are still spelled the same if you were to transliterate this. It's just that ypsilon sounds like E in modern Greek instead of U. All right. So that's why you don't say mu, you say me. All right, the next is omicron. Omicron. So now we get to the O. Elemin, yeah, I got a letter in between. Elemin, xi, O. All right, so now we have omicron. Everyone should be able to remember this one, right? Omicron. Now, in Erasmian, it was pronounced as a short O sound of ah, like, and so you might have heard about the logos, but in modern Greek, it sounds like a O. Logos would be the word for word in Greek. Now, here's what's something interesting. We have O, mi, kron. What do we usually mean when we say micro? Small. This is small o. That's what that means. Omicron is small o. It's the short o, if you will. We're going to have a long o. Anyone know what that letter might be? Omega, big O. So we have little o, and we're going to have big O at the end. But this is Omicron. And a word that starts with this is odos. Odos. This is the word for road. In fact, Jesus is going to say that ego eimi, I am odos, the way, the road. I am the way, the truth, and the life. All right, so odos, Omicron. And that one's easy to write because you write it just like a lowercase o. The next letter is P, not pi. It ruins Pi Day, but Greeks don't say pi. I was telling a couple people before class that I had a Greek professor who taught me Chem 3 in my undergraduate. His name was Dr. Pericles Stravopoulos. You don't get any more Greek than that. And he was leading us through some of the symbols as we were going through equations, and he said, of course, you got a bunch of fraternity guys in your chem classes, and he says, it is not pi, it is P. And so he wouldn't allow us to say pi. It is P. Now this one, we are actually going to have to lift our pen twice. We're going to have 3 strokes, and you can decide which one you want to write first. Typically, I write the top line, so something along those lines. You can't even make it a little straighter if you want, but you have 3 strokes to make your P, and it's the P sound, P, P. Notice, if you leave that one off, you've got L-N-N-O-P, L-M-N-O-P. And so P, we have a word here, patir, patir. That's the word. That's a word for father. All right, we can say, let's say the Greek word for father together. Patir, patir. So we get the p, patir. There are several words that derive from this Greek word. And so, you know, you've got your patriarchy would be, or your patriarch. You would also have paternity, yeah, is going to be related to this root as well. And so we borrow from this word a lot. So patir is the word for father, and it starts with the letter P, which says P. All right, the next letter is Ro. Ro. Now, I am not very good at rolling my R's. If you are, go to town on this one. You can roll your R's. The Greeks will roll their R's, but you can either just say Ra or Ra, or you can say Ra. And that's about the best I can do on rolling my R's. Some of you who know Spanish are going to do a lot better at that than I am. But it's almost like you're not only trilling it, but you're also giving a little breathiness. But either one is fine. And so this is the R sound, but we have our letter R like that. They complete it, and it looks like another one of our letters, and that is the letter, it looks like P in English. It's not the letter P. We just had the letter P. Now we have the letter Ro. And so that's your R sound. Even though it looks like a lowercase p, it's an R sound. Now, there's a couple of letters that you have to say, oh, I can't think English when I look at that. But most of them are either different enough or actually similar enough to their counterpart in English that you really don't have as much trouble. But here's one of those difficult ones where it does look like an English letter, but it's actually the R sound. And there is a word here, riza. Let's say this together, riza. All right. And this is the word for root. I was actually just doing some translating today in Hebrews chapter 12, and I saw this word because you have let no root of bitterness spring up among you. And so riza, riza. All right, so that's the word for root. Starts with ro, and it makes the ra sound. All right, any questions so far?
I wonder if that's where we get rhizome from.
I don't know.
Or flowers.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That'd be interesting. Sometimes I do get curious about those things, and I type in Google etymology and try to figure it out.
Is that a single stroke?
It is. Yeah, in the handwriting form, you are just going to do a single stroke. Start at the bottom below the line, up to the middle, and finish off there at the bottom. Riza. Next letter is sigma. Sigma. Let me erase some of this. So we have R, LMNOP. They don't have a Q, but they have RS. So we're having some similarity to the order of our English alphabet. And we have two forms of sigma. Let's focus on the first one before the slash here. So this is sigma. And you can do this one in one stroke. You start out here, come down, and back up. So you kind of leave a little bit of a tail there at the beginning. But this is the S sound, sigma. For any of you math people, you notice the capital letter is your sum letter, sigma. We're just focusing on the lowercase letter, but it's basically an O with a little line across the top. That's our sigma. I'll come back to that second one in just a second. The word we have here that starts with sigma is sabaton. Sabaton. Can you guess? Even if you didn't see that.
Why is it Sabaton and not Sabaton? Why is it the B?
Sabat. So probably just my mispronunciation, but Sabaton, Sabaton, something along. Again, you kind of have you can kind of do the BV sound a little bit, but yeah, you're going to try that V-ish sound, but Sabaton, Sabaton. But again, I kind of blend it if you want to. But this is actually a borrowed word from Hebrew, Shabbat, and so you have Sabbath. Sabaton. And we have the S sounds. Now, notice next to there we have a slash, because we also have this one. And this one even looks a little more like our English S than this one. This is called a final sigma. Here's why it's called final sigma. You will only ever see this form of this letter at the very end of a word. Now that is somewhat helpful, and you can understand why they had a final sigma, especially whenever you were writing, even when they moved into the minuscules, you had some, but even before that, when you were just writing in capitals, it was, copy in Greek was all caps, no gaps. So that it was all capital letters, there were no spaces between the words, and then they started to develop the minuscule writing, but a final sigma kind of tells you, this is the end of a word whenever you get into those minuscules. So it would be helpful for those lowercase manuscripts that you have a little final sigma shows that's the end of a word. So just be aware that that exists. It doesn't change the sound at all. It's still the same exact letter, just that's the form it takes at the end of the word. All right.
So that's the word sound.
Now, I don't want to get bogged down in that yet, but there are some cases when it comes before certain letters in modern Greek where it will make a Z sound. For instance, our English word cosmos, that is the Greek word cosmos. And when it comes before the M, just the same as we do, cosmos, they say cosmos. And so I don't want you to worry about that pronunciation thing. You can go as deep as you want in learning all of the little intricacies there. I just want you to know it's the S for the most part. And if you say cosmos, that's going to be just fine with me. But it is cosmos in modern pronunciation. You'd have a Z sound. But I want to be more accurate on the slide and then tell you, don't worry about it. I'd be okay with saying, don't worry about that. All right, so the S sound is sigma. All right, the next letter is tav. So we've had R, S, T. So we have a T sound. And this is basically just like a small version of an English uppercase T, maybe a little flare there on the end to give it a little bit of a tail. But this is the T sound, tav, tav, t. The word we're going to associate that, or to hear it in a word, is teknon, teknon. All right, let's say it together. Teknon, teknon. This is the word for child. It starts with the T sound. And interestingly enough, teknon is a neuter word. We're going to learn that that sometimes grammatical gender has nothing to do with sexual gender in Greek. And a lot of other languages are like that. But so in Greek, if you were to say, oh, that's my child, it makes me very happy. That doesn't really work in English, but that's how they would have said it in Greek. They would, because the word is neuter. But we have teknon, starts with the T sound. All right, so that's tav. We're getting close. Yes.
This is just a quick vocabulary question. I've also heard the word tavi, this child. Is there a difference in usage?
A little bit. The root of that, the subject form of that word would be pace. And then you would move into the, what do you call it? The diminutive form, paidion, maybe the one you're thinking of. But they can mean child, but the interesting thing is you have some overlap with that word pace or paidion, that sometimes that's used of a child almost like as a servant, as a slave. And so that's the word that's sometimes used of Jesus in the Greek translation of the Old Testament that's brought into the New, that this is my child, but really it's the servant of the Lord type language. And so this is more strictly a child. That one could be a child or it could be a servant, and so you have to let context determine. But yeah, that's right. And interestingly enough, working in Hebrews 12, doing some translating in Hebrews 12, you have a verb form of that for discipline, which is the pedevo, is the word for that. So it's related to disciplining like you would a child. All right, the next letter is ipsilon. Ipsilon. All right, so we had E, E, E. Greeks like their E sounds. Ipsilon, and this one is just like a U, because technically our U is very similar to their U, but whereas Erasmian would say upsilon or upsilon, oop something. This is eep, and it makes sense why this is an eep. And let me give you an example. So this has a rough breathing. If you were to transliterate this preposition into English, it would be hyper. The U is translated as a Y, hyper. And so this is a E, kind of that I, Y that they all make. And so you have this, it makes sense that even though Erasmian said U, even in our transliterations of things, we would say it was a Y. And so it wasn't exactly a U sound in English. So we're going to learn modern, though, E. So it's just an E, same as iota, eta, ipsilon. And the word here that we have is idor. Let's say it together. Idor. Now look, this one does have, for all those people that took a little bit and know about those rough breathings. Now, the genitive form changes to hydro. So our words that are related to hydroelectric, hydro whatever, are related to this word, idor, which is water. So idor is the word for water. This would be the word that's used throughout the New Testament, like 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 21 and 20, that, saved through water and so on and so forth. So idor. But again, just an E sound, E. Any questions about that?
How would you say it? Would it be hyper?
Yeah, hyper. Yeah. All right, the next is, you've all heard it as phi. That's wrong. Yeah, there we go. This is the letter phi, phi. And you can do this in 2 strokes, or you can do it in 1 stroke. I prefer the 1-stroke method. Never mind. I won't make a joke there. So it's where you go like that. So you start in the middle, go all the way down to the bottom, and then go right on through. So this is the letter phi. Not really. That you don't have to in the handwriting method. You see a little bit of a gap in the font, but you can just do a circle and finish it with a line. Some people even do an omicron with a line through it for a phi. I prefer to not lift my pencil as much as I don't have to. All right, so this is the letter phi. You can either think of it as an F or better maybe a PH. PH. So this is actually an aspirated phi, or an aspirated P if you're interested. So it's a P that has an H on it, and that's exactly what we do. So we have here the word phobos. Phobos. Say it together. Phobos. Can you think of any words that we get from this? Phobia. Yeah, so the F, and that is a PH, even in our word for phobia. And so it's a F sound, just like our PH or our F. All right, we're getting down to the wire here on these letters. Now we have one that takes 2 strokes, and that is, I probably should have gone a little bit lower so you can see it, but key, not chi, this is key. And this is actually a fairly similar to our English CH, but it's not a ch, it is a k, as in the word that we probably, I can't remember what language we took this from, but how do you say that word? Chasm. I like to give instruction for this because whenever we're singing the hymn in the hymns where it says the chasm wide, it's not a chasm wide, it's a chasm wide. And so this is I think we actually get this from German, if I'm not mistaken, but it is it's basically like a kappa that has a H, an aspirated H, so it's an you're getting that breath sound. So this is key. You can either say it like that, or if you want to go to town, get kind of feel a little bit Hebrew or German or some Greeks, you could really get down in your throat and go, some of them go from, I've heard from to ki to he. So it's really kind of anywhere in that range. But if you want to think CH with a k sound, that's simple enough and good. The word for hand is the word kir. All right. Any questions about that? All right. Now we have the letter psi. You can almost make an epsilon and then draw a line through it to make a psi. This is another one of those compound letters where it's a P and an S. There is a Greek word. I was talking to Jacob Davis back there, and I think he is maybe taking a class that borrows from the word I'm about to show here. I think that's how you spell it. Psyche. P-S-Y. Psychology. Psyche. This is we say, we're not going to use the Greek's first letter P. We're going to drop that and say it's silent. No, they would say it all the way through. They'd say psi. So psyche. Or, as we have up here, psalmos. Psalmos. P-S-A-L-M. What is that? Psalm. And so they would actually say the P sound at the beginning, whereas we don't. But that's that letter. It's not very common, except for like the word for soul, psyche. But really psalm is not very common in the New Testament either.
You're saying that letter is not very common?
That letter is not very common, except for those words that you sometimes see, especially the word for soul. But psi is a very rare letter in the grand scheme of the number of letters in the New Testament.
Is it normally at the beginning of the word, or do they use it in the middle?
It would probably normally be at the beginning, more often than not. If you open up your lexicon, it's going to be one of the smaller listings of words that start with that, or if you're reading through. I rarely come across this unless it's the word for soul, just in casual reading. All right, and then we finally making it to the end. What's this one? Omega. Not O-W, this is omega. And we already said this is big O. omega. O. And it looks like our kind of a curvy W, but it is the O, omega. No. No. Nope. It would, if they were spelling it out in Greek, they would actually use an epsilon instead of an eta, so it would be omega. Omega. This word is ora. It actually has the rough breathing, so in kind of a traditional pronunciation, you put an H on it, so hora, but we're going to say ora, and that's where we get our word hour from. And so that's what it means. It's an hour. Ora. But it's a long O sound. So omega. All right. Now, I could just say, make your flashcards and memorize those. I think you should still do that. But let's do something here. It's always good to learn a song. So we're going to learn a song to go with the Greek alphabet. And does everyone kind of know generally the tune of Shortening Bread? Mom's little bit not short. All right, well, we're about to learn it. And you do have to take a few liberties with the tune in order to get the letters to work. But let me do it once through, and then we're going to go real slow together. All right? So it's alpha, vita, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mi, nixi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tav, epsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. All right, so that's how it goes.
Do we have any sheet music for that?
I actually did have sheet music for it, and they didn't put the letters the same places that I did, and I think they made it more difficult, so we'll use this one. So we'll go real slow, and let's just try to, actually before we sing it, let's say the alphabet together, all together. Ready? Alpha, Vita, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Zeta, Eta, Theta, Iota, Kappa, Lambda, Mi, Ni, Xi, Omicron, Pi, Rho, Sigma, Tav, Epsilon, Phi, Chi, Psi, Omega. All right, now let's try to sing it together. Slowly, very, very slowly. All right. Alpha, Vita, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Zeta, Eta, Theta, Iota, Kappa, Lambda, Mi, Nixi, Omicron, Pi, Rho, Sigma, Tav, Epsilon, Phi, Chi, Psi, Omega. All right, very good. All right, so you can pull out your sheets that you have and just kind of go through those letters, maybe sing it through. If you can get the song stuck in your head, then start being able to get a piece of paper and just start writing. So even if you have to go through a song, alpha, vita, gamma, alpha, vita. How do I spell that again? Oh, let me look back at how to make that shape. But do that several times, and it'll be helpful. If we ever happen to do something like Hebrew on this, there's actually a Hebrew song to go with the Hebrew letters. So we have, but this song, I think, it helped me a little bit early on. All right. I think I'm going to skip the next slide and teach you something before we leave. Something I didn't get to last time. And that is, not only do we learn how to say hello, but we also want to greet one another goodbye. And so as we have this farewell greeting, then we will, this is how we say it. If it is to one person, it's eroso, eroso. If it is to multiple people, it is eroste, eroste. So you all would say to me, eroso, eroso. And I would say to you, eroste, eroste. All right, so that's how we'll try to wrap up some classes if we get to it. Next time, we will finish up the odds and ends, and then we'll go into actually kind of putting some words together and seeing how that works. So I appreciate everyone's participation.